Hey, it's Jim, and this is FRM Part 2, the topic on operational risk and resilience, and the reading on risk mitigation. This reading begins with a brief discussion on the necessity of evaluating operational risk in the context of a risk-return framework. And that should make perfect sense. In fact, the second or third paragraph describes the market risk, the liquidity risk, the credit risk to which banks and financial institutions are exposed, but it emphasizes the simple fact that inside of those three types of risk, there are also operational risks, and they fall into generally two categories. There's that internal risk, which of course relates to people, processes, and systems. There's that definition that we've talked about over the last several readings. And then there are external categories of this risk, which relate to things like competition and regulation and maybe other stuff that's, kind of outside of our bubble. So as we look through these learning objectives, I want you to envision really, really good exam questions that sound something like, hey, here's an example of credit risk. And so we're doing this and this and this. And then the actual question says something like, how does operational risk fit into that? I think those are really, really good questions. So we'll go ahead and talk about operational risk exposures. Then we'll talk about internal controls for, some really good time in this slide deck. And what I think is the most interesting part of this reading, look down there, what is that? The fourth one, new products, mergers and acquisitions. We'll spend some good time here relating to how those events necessarily have operational risk inside of each of, whether it's liquidity or market risk or credit risk. And then we'll end with a discussion on reputation and maybe the transfer of these operational risks. So the reading essentially begins with a discussion on the different ways to address these exposures to operational risk. And this is taken right from the ISO 31000. Now, I don't want you to get the sense that there are, hundreds of thousands of these standards. Remember, this International Organization for Standardization, they have these standards on all different sorts of things like, food management and supply chain and processing. But of course, our focus is in this 31,000 on risk management. I'm not sure this is a really great question, but it could probably be an introductory question where the four choices are tolerate, treat, transfer, and terminate. Of course, the definitions are right there, and you probably don't need me to read those things. Part of this reading is to learn how to transfer this risk, to learn how to terminate. Now, terminate might mean completely eliminated, but it also means managing. But of course, the most important one is treat, measures to reduce or otherwise control the impact of this operational risk.